close my eyes and jump. Like I don't have a choice. Or I have to go back into that house and go back out and get my clothes without being heard. And I was like, no, just jump. And I jumped. And I
Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Gissal. This podcast is dedicated to helping you create a life that sets your soul on fire. I believe that is truly possible for everybody, but you have to be willing to do a few things. You have to be willing to let go of your past conditioning. You have to be willing to break free from societal norms. And you have to be willing to get really curious about your life and how you can start to look at it differently. Each week, we will hear stories from people who have done exactly this. People who chose to disrupt the life path they were on, go against the grain, and share the lessons and perspective shifts they had to make along the way. Every episode is committed to not only inspiring you and connecting you with other amazing humans, but actually giving you the tools you need to use this information in your own life so that you continue to evolve and reconnect with your highest self. Are you ready? Let's have some fun. This week, I want to introduce you to Emily Adams. Emily Adams is a mindset coach focused on helping others work through their fear and step into their own power. She's on a mission to inspire, empower, and impact as many people as she possibly can in life. She spent 12 years in the automotive industry. She landed what she thought was her dream job and realized that that was not what made her happy or fulfilled her. She knew that there was a bigger calling in her life, and she needed to make a bigger impact on the world. When she left the corporate world to be a coach, inspiring speaker, and writer, she realized that for the first time in her life, she had found true happiness and was living a life of purpose. She is passionate about helping others step into their power and find happiness as they build the life they deserve to live. I am so excited to share Emily's journey with you because there is so much to learn from her amazing story of growing up in the Amish culture, leaving, and just starting to live life on her own terms. So don't forget to make sure that you hang in until the very, very end of the episode, because not only will you hear this amazing story and learn from Emily's wisdom, I'm going to take a second to break down what I was able to learn from this episode and what you can do to fully embrace this in your own life. Let's get started. All right. So Emily, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. How's your day so far?
It's been incredible, and I'm so honored to be here today.
Yes. So I really want to just get started with, I want my listeners to get to know you just a little bit better. So I have a few questions that I want to ask you. Just the first thing that comes to mind. And are you ready for that?
I'm ready for it.
Perfect. Okay. So the first couple are going to be super easy. So where are you from?
I'm from Indiana, but currently live in Tampa, Florida.
I love that. You answered my next question without me even having to ask it. So, okay. Do you have family, pets, like anything along that line?
I'm a single mom of 2 boys and no pets.
No pets. Yeah, that's like rare.
Pets are like an extra child. I've got 2 boys to raise, so I'm good.
I agree with you. On that. Okay. Where is your favorite place to travel? Not that we've been able to do that.
Yeah. My favorite place to travel used to be anywhere that there was beach and sunshine, and now I live here.
That's just amazing. Where is some place that you've always wanted to go?
I've always wanted to go to Greece.
Oh, I've heard that is amazing. I haven't been there either. We'll have to plan a trip. What do you have the most fun doing?
Oh, I have the most fun doing anything that is active, outdoors, and probably people related. Yeah.
I love it. This is really a selfish ask. What's your favorite book?
Ooh, favorite book? Well, I just started reading Think and Grow Rich, and that's my new favorite book.
Such a good book. Yes, it's like
Yes.
I don't even know how old that book is, but it's like pretty old, but the information is still so pertinent. I love that.
It is.
Okay, a couple more. What was your favorite thing to do as a kid?
Play in the woods with my brothers.
Oh my gosh. We used to have woods in the back of our house too. Okay. Any other fun facts we should know about you? We're going to learn a lot today, but
I mean, ask away. Like, I'm an open book, so ask away.
I love it. Okay, well we'll get into some of that because I know that you are an open book, and so I want to be able to dig into your amazing story. So let's just kind of like dive right in. It's fun because I actually met Emily about a year ago in a mastermind in LA. We both landed in LA at the same time. Um, she had recently quit her corporate job, didn't necessarily have this like perfect plan on what was next. And right, like it was like this really fun transition. And I will never forget that we had to stand up on stage. This was like the worst, best moments of our lives, I'm pretty sure. We had to stand up on stage and like tell people about ourselves. And I remember so clearly Emily standing up and she was like, oh, fun fact too, we like slept in a hotel room together and in the same bed. So we got to know each other really quick, really fast. But I I remember you standing up on stage and telling everybody in the room, which there was like 50 of us, like, do not ask you about your Amish background. And it was just so funny because like what I've learned about you is that you have made more than one decision in your life that completely goes against what like society or what culture would tell you to do. Decisions that for most people would be terrifying. And like in the year that I've known you, it seems like this is a very common theme in your life. And so that's really where I want to start because I want you to tell us more about these moments of huge transitions and maybe just like, where do you get that kind of courage?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question because I've also asked myself the same thing because I noticed that trend as well. So I think for even as young as being 13 and out of school, or even younger than that, I was never your average Amish girl of wanting to like learn how to cook, learn how to clean, be a mom. In all honesty, I never saw myself being a mom ever. But that was kind of the condition of the Amish world. The career was you grow up, you go to school at 13, you're done with school, then you learn to cook, clean. By 16, you're dating, and then you're married and you start having kids by the time you're 18. That was their career path. So at a young age, I never really fit into the society of even the Amish culture. And at the age of 13, when I got out of school, I was a tomboy, which is kind of rare in the Amish culture. And to always be with my dad, I was always with my dad. And partially because me and my mom just did not get along. And the other part because I love to be outdoors. So I spent a lot of time with my dad, and I always wondered, like, man, there's got to be more to life than sitting here and having a family and no career. So at 17 or at 16, my parents made the decision to leave the current community that they were in and start a brand new community, which meant I was leaving everything behind. That mixed along with losing my best friend in a buggy accident when she passed away left me really bitter. And I was just like, I'm done. And so I ended up having to move with my parents. And I share this because later I moved back and stayed with my sister for a little bit because my parents knew I was on the edge of like leaving completely. So they were trying to put a band-aid on the situation. And at 17, I was living with my sister and I saw that their marriage, I didn't want to be the reason why their marriage wasn't going to work. So I left. I actually left in the middle of the night, and it was in a 2-story house, and I was like on the porch roof because I was not about to walk out of the door because I didn't want anyone to hear me because I was still a minor. If I got caught leaving, they could stop me, and then I'd have to have that confrontational discussion of why I'm leaving, and they would stop me. So I choose to just jump out of the roof in the middle of the night. And I still remember standing like on this porch, just thinking, I dropped my clothes. I literally had a bag of clothes and that was it. And I thought, okay, my clothes are there. I just have to close my eyes and jump. Like I don't have a choice. Or I have to go back into that house and go back out and get my clothes without being heard. And I was like, no, just jump. And I jumped. And I share that because a lot of times that is the trend is I will just jump and I don't know, like there's no safety net. There's no nothing, like I didn't know. So then I left, and at 18 became pregnant, still very much going through a culture shock of what the real world was, and got married at 19. And a year and a half into the divorce or into the marriage, I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm going to have to get a divorce. And being raised with no, you don't get divorced. There's no single moms ever in the Amish community. No one ever gets divorced. And that's completely against their beliefs. And I already was somewhat very programmed to be very religious. And I was already burning in hell to their standards. So when I jumped, I always say when I jumped that night, I was like, I'm going to live my best life because I'm already burning in hell to everyone else's standards. And so later, I was going to file for divorce and was pregnant with my second son. So I stayed. And it was a very abusive marriage, and the alcohol, like it was crazy. So I finally got the nerve to leave and left the marriage after 3 chances, like 3 shots. I even filed twice and canceled the divorce because that's how good he was at manipulating me to talk into staying. So after the 3rd time, I finally left, and it was so scary because I had no idea how I was going to do this as a single mom. I had been working, I was a manager at one of the factories. And then I decided when I left the marriage, I was like, you know what? I'm about to do what I've always wanted to do. And that was to go to college. So I had got my GED because we only go to 8th grade, which is equivalent to like a 6th grade education in the Amish culture. And I got my GED. I walked in and I told the student advisor, I said, look, I want to go to Purdue and I want to graduate in 4 years with a bachelor's degree. And she was like, okay, I can help you. She's like, you're probably going to have to quit your job because as a single mom, like it's too hard for you to balance working single mom and going to college full time. And I was like, no, I can't quit my job. Like I don't have a safety net of cash for 4 years to quit my job. And she goes, well, let's plan on 6 years. I was like, no, you still don't get my point. You still don't understand. It's 4 years and I'm going to graduate in 4 years. If you don't want to give me this, I'll go to IU. I just played the card of like, if Purdue's not going to give me this, I'll just go to IU. And so even in that time, like I just took the leap. I didn't know how to write a paper. When I went to my first college course and they were like, you have to write a paper. And I was like, oh, what's that? Like I had no idea. So I ended up graduating in 4 years, landed, the corporate job. And meanwhile, for my therapy, instead of going to therapy after my divorce, I just got a gym membership. And that's where I started my career in powerlifting. And again, when I started working out, it was either, okay, I'm either going to keep this weight on me or I'm going to shred it off. And that's what I did. I ended up losing like 65 pounds, got remarried to what I thought was the love of my life. And 2 years later, he came home. He was like, yeah, I don't love you anymore. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I know we were having issues, but come on, like this is round 2. And I felt like such a horrible person because it was not even, round 2, like I couldn't believe like I was going round 2. And that really, in that moment, I had to make a choice. If I was going to go down the deep, dark hole and just like drink my life away or do whatever I wanted, or if I was going to pull it together. And it took me, I would say, a good 3 months to make that decision that we're going to pull it together. We're going to pull my life together. But there was this moment of, I called my friend and I was like, look, I'm done. I don't want to live. You can have my kids. Like, I'm done. Just come get them. And she was like, no, she's like, you have one more shot here. She's like, check yourself in to get help, or you take a mom vacation. I'm coming to get your boys. And I decided to take the vacation because I was not about to get checked in. Like, I was like, no, I can't do that. But, the pride in me was like, no, I don't need help. Right. So I took a mom vacation. And that's where like things really shifted. I literally opened my laptop, Googled a place, San Diego, California came up. I went to San Diego. I was like, what do I want to do on this trip? I planned skydiving and that was it. I went, lay on the beach, cried, went skydiving and came back. But at the time, I owned a house and I was in this small community and I hated living where I was living at, and I didn't like the boys' school they were going to, and I was like, man, we need to move. And I came home and I told my boys at the airport. I called a realtor and I said, come out and look at my house because I'm going to sell it. And I came home and told my boys, like, hey, we're probably going to move. And my oldest was devastated, like he was heartbroken because this is all he's ever known. And he begged me not to sell it. And I was like, okay, the mom guilt kicked in. I was like, no, we're just going to do it. And we're just going to take the plunge. And he got on board. We ended up moving and it was the best move we ever made. And then I ended up making the decision to leave my corporate job. And yeah, I left with zero plan. I had some safety net, I had some cash saved up and had no idea what I was doing. And then when I left, and I was very much, when I showed up in the mastermind, as you said, I was very much closed off. Don't ask me about, I was tired of people asking me about the Amish culture and all the crazy questions I would get. Like I would get questions as crazy as, do the Amish have sex? And I'm like, no, I was just put on this earth. So I was just like so frustrated, but it was just because people were curious, right? And so fast forward during the mastermind and then COVID hitting, and COVID was actually a huge blessing for me because it made me slow down. It made me take the time to face everything that I should have faced for years and talk about massive growth and the amount of healing and everything that I did during that year. It was incredible. And I actually started through a meditation challenge. That's how some of my growth started, was through a meditation challenge. And mind you, like a year ago, before this started, I had a friend tell me to meditate. And I was like, no, powerlifters don't meditate. And I'm not a monk and I'm not about to sit there and meditate for hours. So, and then now I meditate on a daily basis.
I know. It's funny how that transition happens.
Yeah. So I made massive growth, became a completely different person, and really realized what was important in my life, changed my parenting style, ditched a lot of the religious beliefs and just the beliefs I had growing up, and did a lot of reprogramming. And then the latest, I guess I would say the latest jump was I came to visit Tampa in October. And I decided that this was the place that I was going to move to. And I, again, went back and told my boys, I was like, so do you guys want to move? And my oldest was like, Mom, you said I no longer have to move and I can graduate from this high school, because he's getting ready to go into high school. And I was like, oh, but you could be on vacation every day. Like I try to hype it up and it wasn't happening. And my youngest was excited. And a couple days later, he was like, yeah, I think I'll move. And so we decided to move, and we knew one person in Tampa, and it's been the best move yet. So to answer your question about the courage, I don't really have an answer. Sometimes it's knowing that if something feels right and going for it, then go for it. What's the worst that can happen? And I'm very much like the pros and cons. Sometimes I weigh them out. Other times I just close my eyes and just go with it anyways.
Oh my gosh. I could dig into so many things in this story, but it's like your ability to just do what feels good for you. And that's a theme that I see. And I think the hard part is that it's not always what feels good in the moment, right? Like the hard decisions don't always feel good. We wish it was like this, but there was no other choice. It's almost like your intuitive guidance on like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And since you were, very young, and really all of us, we come to earth and we are perfect in so many ways. And then we get all of these belief systems put on top of us. And then we have to start to sort them out, and we start to lose who we really are. And it sounds like at a young age, you started to do that. And you also, up until now, it's like you've just been peeling away the layers and saying, like, this one isn't good for me. This one doesn't feel good for me. I've got to do this. Like, and again, your ability to really just like always do what was best for you, even though everything outside of you, everything externally was saying the total opposite. Right. And so that seems like that's an overwhelming theme for you is like
Oh,
most people
most
can't
definitely.
most people can't do that. Right. They are so like, how do you how do you separate other people's ideas of what you should be doing with your life and your what you and your gut is telling you that you should really be doing? Like how do you kind of push push other people's opinions to the back burner, I guess, and just like you do you?
Yeah, and I think I learned this at the age of 17 when I was getting ready to leave. You know, my parents came, sat me down, had a conversation of like, if you choose to leave, you don't come back. You're not coming back, and you're going to go to hell. And then after they were done, the church came in, and during that time, I used the coping mechanism of just numbing it out. Not a healthy coping mechanism, but it was one of those coping mechanisms of no, this is not what you want, and this is not what you are made for. And I used to always play over and over, I am made for more, and I know that. But there were times when I would go to bed at night and I would just cry myself to sleep, just begging, like, God, please, like, get me out of this situation because of the fact that I felt like I was going to break. I felt like I was just going to give in and stay. And that's not the only time I've noticed me doing that in my life when I made the decision to leave the corporate world. You know, I had people ask me like, are you sure you're mentally stable? Like, do you need to go into like get support? Do you need help? Mind you, I just went through a divorce. No one was worried about my mental stability at that time because I was just going through a divorce. But when I left the corporate world, because I was a single mom, and the company even asked me, where are you going to? What competitor? Like, we need to know. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere. And so I think I had to you have to stand in so much of your own power and just know that it's in my heart. And if it's not in my heart, it's there for a reason. It's not going to go away. And I didn't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm going to quit my job. I started having this feeling in November, and I finally had enough courage to quit in February because I kept battling with it of like, how do I know if this is right? And then all the signs were there. Like it kept just coming back. And so if you struggle finding the courage, you can always ask for a sign, whether you believe in God, universe, whatever it is, ask for a sign and it will show up. So I think asking for the sign and also being very clear on, okay, I have this feeling and it just will not go away. I can't do anything where it won't go away. It just keeps coming back over and over.
Yes. And it's, first of all, it's so funny to me that, like, literally, if you choose to go against what society may or like thinks is the correct, whatever, I'm putting that in air quotes because there is no correct way to do life, but what society has deemed as normal, that somebody literally thinks you're mentally unstable. Like, I laugh about that on my own journey all the time because I'm like, people probably think I'm nuts from the outside looking in, and like I'm okay with that, but like it's a messy process when you choose to throw logic sometimes to the wayside and go with what your intuition is guiding you to do. And that's like, I talk about that all the time, the difference between intuition and emotional decisions. And like, if you're making a decision based on emotion, it's going to be very quick. It's going to be very like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go after it. But the thing with emotion is it comes and goes, right? So you could easily say, no, that's not what I want, or I'm going to wait a day or two and see how I feel. And more than likely, it'll go away if it's an emotional decision. Where for you, it's that intuition piece. And this is the thing that so many people ignore is when you have this like gnawing in your gut that says, and like in your whole body is saying, I have to do this, and you try to put it aside over and over and over, you're like, I know that sounds crazy, so I'm not going to do it. But that sounds crazy, I'm not going to do it. And it keeps coming back. You have to listen. There's a reason. It will never go away. You can, like you said, there's going to be like, we have a lot of coping mechanisms. We have a lot of ways that we can numb what we are feeling. But at the end of your life, or as you go on, it will keep coming back until you listen to it. And I believe this is why actually a lot of people are miserable, is because they
Yeah.
don't listen to that.
But it's gotten so loud, and they've gotten let their head and everything in their life be so loud that they can't listen. And sometimes the listening is uncomfortable. When I started meditation, I was like, this is the most uncomfortable thing I've done in my life. And so
Yeah.
I understand why people don't take the time to listen, because it's very uncomfortable.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I actually it's really scary to listen
Yeah.
to our own thoughts, and like what's actually going in there, and like how many things we've actually suppressed, because it's not until we take the time to be in silence, to simply be, that all of the things that we've been pushing down, because that's what we're taught, right? We don't have time to deal with these things. You just have to keep moving. Like, and it is the only way to the other, excuse me, the only way to the other side of anything is through. We don't like that will manifest later in life as disease, as so many worse things than actually dealing with our shit, right? But like
Yes.
it seems in the moment so much easier to just like, no, I'll handle that later. And we don't ever give ourselves space. And something that's interesting too is that, as it's scary, it's scary for a multitude of reasons, but sometimes it's really scary to slow down and listen to yourself and realize, like, start to peel back that onion and realize things like, what if I didn't actually want to have kids? What if I didn't actually want to do this? But here I am, because I followed
Yeah.
what society told me to do. But like, everything happens in our life for us in some way. And so that doesn't mean that you don't love your kids unconditionally. It doesn't
Right.
mean, but it is an opportunity to say, I can still live the life that I want to live, even with my kids, and show them what's possible.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, because, when I was at the point of, I don't want to be a mom anymore, like I'm just done. I just don't want to be a mom. One, I felt horrible. And two, there are so many moms out there. If you ever feel like that, that's normal. Like we get to the point where we're just done being parents. And it's normal to have that feeling. And I share that because again, society has made it to where we need to feel guilty if we feel that way, and it's not. And sometimes when we feel that way, that's just a sign that we need a break as a parent. And I always tell my boys have asked me, was I planned? And I always am honest. I'm like, no, you were not planned. But I'm incredibly grateful to have you, because what they know now, but what they never knew is, in my darkest times, they were there, and I needed them during that time. They were always there. And they are still to this day my biggest fans. Like my youngest, when I started my podcast, he took a screenshot of it and took it in to show his teacher and said, you need to listen to my mom's podcast because she's amazing. And so I share that because I never planned to be a mom, but now I know why I'm a mom. I know why I have two incredible, amazing boys, because they are my fans. And when even going into dating, I always ask, when am I going to find like the real love of my life? And I'm like, actually, you have two in your life. So pour all that love into them. And that has been incredible. And just one of the many reasons why I am a mom. But I just want to make sure those moms out there that do feel the guilt of like, I'm done being a parent. Don't feel that guilt. That's normal.
Oh my gosh, I love that you say that. And like I'm not I'm not a mom, so I love that there is a perspective that can come on here and say that give moms permission to not feel that guilt when it comes to because like you said, that guilt is really you have to look within and see like where is that guilt really coming from? And a lot of times it's that you've lost that connection with yourself. So like you said,
Yes.
you need a break because you have completely when you pour into other people for so long and you completely neglect your needs. And I think you do such a beautiful example of showing women how to put themselves first and how that ripples to the other people in your life. Like your boys are get the best version of Emily every single day because you choose to put your needs first. And I think
Yes.
that's a really powerful thing for women to
Thank
hear.
you.
And also, I like almost teared up and I got chills when you were talking about your boys. And it just made me, I was like, oh, try not going to cry on the podcast, but I kind of want to. It was just like a really special thing. So, um, yeah, I just think all of that is just so powerful. And going back to something that you said before is our society, a lot of our culture has taught us that we have to see it first and then we'll believe it,
Hmm.
right? That's what we're taught. And something that you alluded to earlier in the conversation is that you don't always get to see what the next step is. You don't always get to understand. And that's where having that belief and then you get to see it. So you have to believe it first. And this is a common misconception. Like we have to believe that we have the power to make anything happen. And it's interesting because I love that you said like ask God for a sign, ask the universe for a sign because you will always get it. One thing I want to caution listeners on and people on is that the universe will always or God will always support you, but not until you take the first step. And a lot of times we try to put the power and the belief into something like the universe or God. But the reality is, you have to have the belief within yourself that you can literally make anything happen that you put your mind to and that your heart is calling you to do, and everything else will show up to support you. And I
Agreed.
think,
100%.
well, and
100%.
you're a beautiful example of that is that you knew what you had to do and it didn't make sense. And but you just had to believe that you were strong enough, that you had the power. And it didn't really matter what happened externally because internally you knew that you were going to be okay.
Yes. And I had that feeling at every stage of my life. But like you said, it does start with the belief. If I didn't feel like I could do it, and I will be honest, like when I went through my divorce, my first one with being a single mom, I was like, there is no way I can do this. And I actually then I had a friend that believed so much in me, and that's who I relied on because she taught me to believe in myself. So sometimes you'll have those people in your life, and it doesn't matter if you're a friend, you're like, oh, well, yeah, of course, she's my friend. She has to say that. But no, believe that. Believe that because they're believing in you before you can believe in yourself.
Yeah. And like, don't fight it. Right. That's what we do. We're like, no, I know that you think I can, but like, I really can't. Right. And like,
Yes.
you're right, though. We have to be able to look at those, the people in our lives that are our biggest support systems, they aren't just doing it because they feel like they have to.
Right.
They're doing it because they truly see something in you that maybe you can't quite see in yourself. And I liked it. Those you can call them angels. I call those God winks. I call them whatever it's like those people that show up at the right time that are like, keep trucking, sister. You're okay.
Yes. Yes. Those are the people to have. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. And sometimes you have to find them. Right.
Yes.
Like, and I think that's also a hard thing is that when you decide to go, I mean, you're another perfect example of this, is that the people that we want to support us the most is usually our friend, like our closest friends, our family, and they won't always understand it. And so they're probably going to be some of the last ones to support you. And it's not because they don't love you, it's because maybe they love you so much that they are terrified of watching you fail. They are so scared to watch you go in a totally opposite direction than everything that they've been taught and fall. Like nobody likes to watch people fall on their face unless we're watching like America's Funniest Home Videos, right? Um,
Yes,
like
exactly.
we don't like to see people. It's like so uncomfortable um, to watch people fizzle out or fail, um, and that's where you have to have again that belief in yourself, because you're not always going to have the people that you want to be supporting you standing on the
Exactly.
sidelines cheering you on.
And there has been people that have told me, even since leaving my corporate job was, I was so scared for you. And the one lady goes, I have anxiety just for you. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't have anxiety for me. But it is true, because they're so scared for you that they're like, I don't know what to do. They don't know how to support you.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So, what, like looking back, because I mean, there's a lot that's happened, but like, what are some of the biggest lessons or biggest perspective shifts you feel like you had to make along this journey?
Mm. Man, there was a lot of them. So on relationships, finding myself before I started falling in love with someone else, because if you don't know who you are going to keep repeating the pattern. And so basically what I had to learn is everything I didn't love about myself, I was trying to find a guy to love that part of me. And when I realized what true self love was, that was a huge shift for me to be like, oh, so this is what self love is. Because, I wasn't taught what self love was. And I wasn't even said, I love you. Like growing up, they never said, I love you. And so when I understood and realized that, okay, this is what self love is. It's not just going out and buying me stuff, but it's actually doing the internal work that's very uncomfortable for me to do. And I started doing it. I realized, wow, every time I was in a relationship and even in my marriages, I was looking for someone to fulfill me. So, from a relationship part, don't look for other people or things to fulfill yourself, but do it for yourself. Fulfill
Oh,
that same spot.
this is so, so good because it's amazing because it's so true that you can only love others to the extent at which you love yourself. And we get that ass backwards every like most of the time. We're like, no, if I show enough people how much I love them, then maybe finally I will feel good about myself. But that's just you trying to prove your worth in a way that isn't going to work. Like you said, it only comes from that internal work. And when that happens, and I see this in relationships all the time because, and I can only say this because this used to be me, is codependency.
Oh,
What that
yes.
creates is a codependent. If you are relying on someone else to make you happy and to make you feel good about yourself, you will end up in a codependent relationship and it will always be a struggle because the reality is you want to have in a really beautiful relationship, you want to have two independent people that choose to be together every single day. But you know that if they left or if you left because if at some point that's what's best for you, that you're going to be okay.
Yes.
I love that.
Very much so. I think, and I could go on and on about self love and finding yourself before you start even dating. Um, but
Please,
the
girl.
other shift, I think the other shift too was on a parenting side, and in a society where we are very much raised that the parent is on a pedestal and the child is down below. That has been a drastic shift I have made, and the best shift I made for my boys. my boys will even tell you, my mom has changed so much. And so now we can have conversations about different things. And I'm now very open about having conversations about how you treat people, about sex, about racism, all these things we're having conversations about. And it allows the door for communication. When you take yourself off the pedestal as a parent and you are more of a collaboration, it allows that door to open up for your child to start having conversations with you, to start telling you, hey mom, look, I'm struggling with this feeling. I'm not sure what it's like, but more so it feels like I'm being anxious. And so then they can start having those conversations. They can start telling you how they feel. Because for years, my boys didn't tell me that. Yes, if it was something drastic, they would. But now they can have that open dialogue of, I'm really just sad today about whatever it is they're feeling. And I think it's so important for parents to pull themselves down off that pedestal. You can learn so much from your children. It's incredible. And make that relationship a collaboration. And when you make a mistake or you feel like you failed, be honest with them. And let's start we're allowed to show our emotions in front of our children. If we need to cry, we can cry. I've cried more in front of my boys this last year than I have my entire life. But it shows them, mom makes this okay. So if I'm feeling sad and I want to cry, I can. It doesn't make me weak.
Oh my gosh. This is I love, love, love this because I have so much compassion for men in our society and our culture because what you're doing is showing your boys that it's okay because in our culture men are taught to suck it up, push their
Yes.
emotions down and just do what's best for the family. Don't ask questions, don't complain about it. And it's why we're having so many there's so many issues, right? Because
Yes.
men are just suppressing their feelings. And I have so much compassion because there's not that space to be open. And I
Right.
love that you're giving your boys that opportunity. And I also love what you said about taking yourself off the pedestal. And, again, I don't have kids, but I look at this the other way a lot of times because we put our parents on pedestals. And I have once I could started to realize that we are just souls and sometimes we don't actually know whose soul is older. And when we can take our parents off of that pedestal and realize that they're just humans doing the best they can with the information that they have, we actually open up the opportunity to teach them so many things, understanding that they didn't grow up in a culture where self development and personal development and talking about feelings and all of those things were normal. We can teach them that that's normal and then that's okay. And we can start to shift their perspective. I've taught my parents so many things. And because I chose to not say that's just who they are,
Right.
because, oh, that's something that I really can't stand when people say because everybody has an opportunity to be their true self, to improve, to grow, to evolve, but sometimes we strip away that ability because we don't open up the space to do so because we don't have the courage to point it out, right? So
Right.
it's just amazing. I love that perspective. I love those two things. I think that those are huge things that people can take from this conversation is so much wisdom in that. So let me ask you this. What is one lesson you think you're still in the middle of learning?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I would say I'm still in the middle of learning maybe more than one. So,
Always. It's always it's always like that.
I would say I'm in the middle of learning with my business. In the middle of learning one, money is not everything. So we've done some serious, massive work on money mindsets and knowing that it's okay if I'm not making what I had projected that I should be making. So I'm still learning that and the business to go with the flow more. And you can listen to all the business mentors and all the business coaches and all do everything on the business side. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And I think that's been a massive thing that I'm still learning. Because some days I'm like, okay, what direction am I going here? And then I would say the other lesson I'm learning is on dating. I'm learning a lot in dating, not just because, I want to shifting my energy around dating and not viewing it as something that I have to do because I don't have to do anything right, but it's something I want. I want to find the love of my life and then asking myself, like, what energy am I putting around it? And when I do go on dates, I used to be so rigid of like, when I go on dates, like I expected XYZ. And now I've completely shifted to zero expectations. There's zero expectations. And when you show up from that space, one, they can feel that energy and you just show up as your true self because you don't have expectations of yourself and you don't have any expectations of them. And so I think I'm still learning a lot on the dating side too.
Oh, and I love all of those. And I think it's funny because we try to compartmentalize them, right? Like on my business, this is what I'm learning. In my life, in my dating, this is what I'm learning. And like you've said, we've done a lot of work that life doesn't stay in compartments, right? And so what you're going through in one area, it's rippling to all of these other things. So the lessons that you're learning are just so beautifully interconnected. And I think it's really funny. Our expectations are what bring us the most unhappiness.
Yes.
Right. So, I think that those are so good. And we're always, we're always learning something. And, my motto is just stay really, really curious about what's going on in our life because it's in the lessons that we get to grow, that we get to continuously evolve. And when we stop doing that, there's no reason to be here. So we are always learning lessons. And it'd be really nice if we are always learning like one cut and dry lesson at a time, but that's just not the way things work. So I know that you have such a huge heart for helping other people like get out of their own way, love themselves and all of that. So how can people find you? How can they work with you? Because I know that like the listeners are going to get so much out of this interview and I want them to be able to connect with you more.
Yeah, so they can find me on emilyadams.net, but I do hang out on my Instagram stories, which is Inspire, Empower, Impact. And that's probably the best way to connect is actually on Instagram. But I do have a contact page on my website as well.
Awesome. And I will make sure that I link that all in the show notes so people can go. So make sure that you go follow Emily. She will always have something that's going to make you think, that's going to make you really like just shift that perspective. And there's just so many things that I hope that you're able to take from this interview because there's a lot of life lessons here. And Emily she's been through so much and it's so fun to look backwards and see all the lessons that you were able to learn and just the amazing human being that you have evolved into. So I just appreciate you so much for being here and for sharing all of that with our listeners. And yeah, I'm just excited for them. Please connect, right? I know I say this all the time, but when we say please connect with us, like if there is something that resonated with you, please actually connect because we want to hear from you. And so,
Yes. Yes.
right? Okay, so let's talk about that pedestal thing for 2 seconds.
Yes.
Nobody that you hear on a podcast is up on a pedestal. We are all one. We are all the same. We welcome you to please connect. And we want to connect with you because we are no higher. We are no lower. We are just all on this even playing field. So take the people that you hear on podcasts off of the pedestal and remember that we're just human beings and we're all just souls and we just want to connect.
Yes. And I feel like the other thing I would add to that is nothing makes more my day than someone sending me a message like, hey, I heard you on this podcast and this is the value I got out of it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for sharing, because that makes my day, just knowing that somewhere someone got value and it helped you in some way. And I love connecting and having conversations.
Yes, and I always joke that whenever you do a podcast, a guest speaking, whatever it is, that sometimes you just black out and you're like, "Oh God, I hope I said something that was worth a damn," because like we're just like in the flow, right? And so it's really good to hear when somebody took something from this. So I love it. And Emily, again, I cannot thank you enough for just being here, being part of the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. And I'm just so grateful that you came into my life when you did. And I never think that those things are on accident. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Wow. What an amazing episode with Emily Adams. She really came through and shared so much wisdom, and I took so much out of that. And one of the big things that Emily reminded us of, and I have to remind myself constantly, is that what she said was money is not everything. And what I want you to take away from that is that it's not that money is not important. It's not that I'm saying that it doesn't give us things, it doesn't create freedom or anything like that. But what we are taught is the most important thing might actually be very different than what our soul is actually calling for. And up until this point, you more than likely have been living on someone else's terms. And this is where I want you to start to shift that. Because from my experience, personal and working with dozens and dozens of clients, so many men and women don't end up creating a life that sets their soul on fire, a life that is of true fulfillment, true purpose, a life that they wake up in the morning excited to live because they're chasing somebody else's definition of success. And that's what I want to talk about today is your definition of success. And so the first thing I want you to take from this is that just about everything you think you know has been taught to you by the people or the environments around you. You were brought into this world, this perfect, unique, amazing soul. And then throughout life experience, we start to become a little bit unbalanced, a little bit blocked. And as the years go on, our parents, our teachers, our friends, our family, the religion that we grew up with, whatever it looks like, intentionally or unintentionally start to shift and shape our belief systems, our habits, and the stories that you have about the world. But more importantly than that, I want to talk about the stories you have about yourself, right? We're taught what you are and aren't capable of, what you should and shouldn't do, what you're supposed to believe and what you're not supposed to believe, what you need to be successful, putting that in quotations if you're not watching this, in this life. And it's not their fault because they're just humans doing the best they can as well. But the reality of all of these things is that they were probably passed down to them from their grandparents and their parents. And it's just been this ancestral pass down of information. And the problem with that is that no one stops to question it. We go through life living on autopilot, living in our past conditioning, and then wondering why nothing is changing, why we can't seem to build something different, why it always feels like there's something missing. And the problem is, it doesn't matter how much you accomplish externally, you're never going to find what you're looking for if you aren't willing to start asking the hard questions and getting really curious about what comes up, and then redefining what success actually means to you, right? And so that's what I want you to take from this is I want you to start to define what success means. And something that you will hear me say time and time again is that the thing is never the thing, which is why the worksheet that I'm going to attach to this, and what I want you to do with this is that whatever you think success means to you, I want you to dig in. And I want you to ask yourself at least 5 more times, what is it about that that's so important? I call it the 5 whys. Why do you want that? How does it serve you? What does it give you? Go through that process at least 5 times to start to get to the root of what you're actually seeking. Because for so many people, it's not actually the big house or the nice car or the boat or to lose the 20 pounds or to make a certain amount of money. That might be what it is on the surface, but when you really dig in, it's more than that. And some of the things that have come up with people that I've worked with is that they do want the money, but the money equates to the freedom. They want the freedom of time and money so that they can spend more time doing the things that they love to do. They want to live a life of purpose. They want to wake up and feel excited about the life that they're building and what they get to do every single day. They want to be able to love themselves unconditionally and feel confident in who they are. They wanted to find a tribe of men or women and a group who would support them in what other people might call their crazy dreams, right? They wanted to be seen for who they are without feeling like they have to be who anyone else thinks they should be, or they had to prove themselves in any way, or they had to put on a mask to fit in, right? Those are much deeper reasons. And I want you to start to think about that. And the thing is that these things shift in our life, because once we reach one of those definitions of success, like we may need to shift it and see what, because we're meant to evolve. We're meant to continuously grow. We need to be grateful for where we are and how far we've come, but you need to be constantly reflecting and constantly questioning, what does success mean to me? And am I living that? Or am I chasing somebody else's? Right? So again, I'm going to attach a worksheet to help you work through this, but the only way to truly transform your life is to take bold action. And this is the bold action I am going to ask you to take this week. And I want to hear from you. So make sure you shoot me a text at 248-206-3431 with what you came up with after peeling back the layers and starting to really figure out what your true desires are, not the surface level bullshit. What do you really want in your life? And then don't forget to also share this episode on Instagram and tag both Emily and myself with your biggest takeaway. Rate and subscribe the podcast. Every single one truly means the world to me. And lastly, use the link in the show notes to subscribe to my weekly energy update on the website so that you can be entered to win the Nintendo Switch that we're going to be giving away for the start and the launch of this podcast. I am sending you all so much love and light, and I am beyond grateful for each and every one of you. See you next week.